A male cadet smashed her radio before the field exercise. She signaled command without it. The radio hit the concrete table in pieces before she even understood what was happening. 1 second Sergeant First Class Peters was standing over her, spit flying, veins rising in his neck. The next, her only lifeline to command was scattered across the dirt in shards of black plastic. Specialist Thompson didn't move. She didn't blink. She just stared at the wreckage of the one tool that was supposed to keep her alive in the next 6 hours. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love knowing who's listening. The morning had started like any other. Dew still clung to the grass when the company formed up near the tree line. Boots crunching gravel, breath visible in the cool air. Thompson had checked her gear twice, the way she always did, radio strapped tight, battery full, frequency locked. She wasn't the loudest soldier in the platoon, but she was the most exact. Precision was her armor. In a world that doubted her every step, being flawless was the only defense she had. Peters had never liked that about her. He was the kind of instructor who believed fear built soldiers. Command believed in him too, or at least tolerated him, because his numbers were good and his cadets rarely failed inspections. What nobody talked about was the cost. The quiet ones who transferred out. The ones who stopped speaking up in briefings. Thompson had heard the rumors before she ever met him. She told herself she wouldn't be one of the quiet ones. Then came the exercise. It was supposed to be simple. A coordination drill, radio checks between forward observers and the command post half a mile out, a test of nerve under simulated pressure. Smoke canisters popped in the distance. Blank rounds cracked through the humid air. Thompson's hands were steady as she raised the radio to confirm her position. That was when Peters snatched it from her grip. "You call that a hold?" He barked, loud enough for the whole squad to hear. "You think command wants to hear this?" He didn't wait for an answer. He slammed the radio onto the table, and again, until the housing cracked and the antenna snapped clean off. Static hissed once, then died. Silence rushed in behind it, the kind of silence that makes a crowd hold its breath. Somewhere behind her, a private murmured something under his breath. Nobody else spoke. 60 pairs of eyes waited to see what she would do. She thought she'd never find a way to signal command in time. She was wrong. Thompson looked down at the broken device, then up at Peters, and something in her chest went very still. Not fear, but clarity. She had trained for loss of equipment. She had trained for chaos. What she hadn't trained for was a superior who created the chaos himself. For one long heartbeat, she felt the old instinct rise, apologize, shrink, disappear into the tree line of her own silence. It would have been easier. It would have been what he expected. She didn't do it. Instead, she reached for the signal mirror clipped to her vest, a small, unglamorous piece of gear most cadets forgot they carried. She turned toward the observation tower rising behind the motor pool, its banner reading "Adapt, Overcome," win in bold letters against the sky, soldiers watching from the platform above. Sunlight cut low across the field. She angled the mirror, caught the light, and began flashing the pattern of short and long bursts drilled into every signals class she'd ever taken. A message without words, without wires, without permission. The tower went still. Then one soldier atop it straightened, lifted binoculars, and began relaying the pattern down the line. Dust hung in the air, gold in the slanting light. A Humvee engine idled somewhere behind them, indifferent. Peters opened his mouth to say something and found, for the first time that morning, that no words came. Was he wrong to push her, or was he simply cruel disguised as discipline? The soldiers watching weren't sure anymore. Some had seen instructors like him before, the ones who called it tough love. Others recognized something darker, something that had nothing to do with training and everything to do with control. The line between the two blurred right there in the dirt, and no one in that formation could say for certain which side Peters stood on. Command post confirmed receipt of the signal within 90 seconds. Thompson had completed the exercise without the tool that was supposed to make it possible. Word moved through the company like a current through wet grass. By the time the debrief started, the captain in charge had already heard what happened from 3 separate sources. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He simply asked Peters to explain himself in front of the same soldiers who had watched him destroy government property in a fit of anger, and watched a young woman refuse to let it break her. Thompson didn't gloat. She didn't need to. She stood at attention, dust, and sweat on her face, and said only that she'd been trained to adapt when the plan failed. It was, after all, written on the banner behind them the entire time. Because kindness doesn't vanish. It waits, and it finds its way back. And sometimes, so does justice. It waited in the quiet of that dusty field, in the glint of a small mirror catching the sun, in the steady hands of a soldier who refused to be silenced, proving that a message doesn't need a radio to be heard, and a person doesn't need permission to stand their ground. If this story moved you even a little, tell me in the comments what part hit you hardest. I read every single one. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, hit subscribe, because there's another one coming, and you won't want to miss it.